Right, good evening ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I think it's only the second meeting we've had back in the Town Hall since COVID. I'd like to welcome everyone to the first meeting of the new Cabinet of the Conservative Administration and welcome all members, including Councillor Watkins as Leader of the Opposition, following last full council of the municipal year, allowing Leader of the Opposition to attend as well. So I do intend to try and be as open and democratic and transparent with these Cabinet meetings as possible. And we'll come on to a bit more about that when we get on to item 5. So the meeting protocol is as printed, but I'll read it for the benefit of new members, particularly Councillor Kenner. I think everyone else is actually familiar with it, but I'll read it out anyway. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once out of the building, please gather outside the Yorkshire Bank on the opposite side of the road. Exit by the door by which you entered the room or by the fire exits, which are clearly indicated by the standard green fire exit signs. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of staff. Please also make sure all your mobile phones are turned off or set to silent. I would also advise that all or part of the meeting will be recorded for future broadcast. Thank you. That leads us on to agenda item 2, which is apologies, and all members of the Cabinet are here, and so is Councillor Watkins, so there are none. That leads us on to item 3, which is declarations of interest. There are new declarations, I believe, that need to be added following annual council. I'll start with Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Can I declare that I'm now a member of the Warwickshire Ways Partnership, a member of the Warwickshire Direct Partnership, and a member of the Sherborne Asset Company Shareholder Committee.
Thank you. Anyone else, any additional items of relevance? I have the LGA, the LEP, the West Midlands Combined Authority, and NABCEL's already printed, I believe. I think they are the main ones which might affect any agenda items tonight. Councillor Golby.
I also shadow on the LGA, not the LGA, the LEP and NABCEL.
Thank you. And Councillor Guttridge. Okay, thank you. That leads us on to agenda item number 4, which is the minutes. There is a slight amendment from those which were printed in the agenda paper, which is on the page 3 under any other items, part B. There is a mistake with the spelling of Azalea Kane on the printed minutes, so I did previously ask Rebecca to amend that, and that is amended on the copy that I have to sign. So subject to that amendment, is everyone happy for me to sign those minutes? Okay, thank you very much. Right, public consultation. I am aware that we have 2 speakers who have indicated a desire to speak, which is Councillor Condacor on all items. Is that including the extra item which has come under the urgency?
Sorry, yes, the extra item, but I don't need to speak on 7 now. I've read the massive amount of paperwork. That helps.
Okay. And I also have Mrs. Condacor. Is yours the same? Are you no longer wishing to speak on 7 or continue to speak on 7? Okay, thank you. Just to outline with public consultation, following annual council, there has been a change to the Constitution which allows members of the council time to speak without being on the clock, which I believe and hope will be a step forward in allowing greater debate and participation in Cabinet meetings. However, I would caution all members that this shouldn't be abused, that we are still here to deal with business, and that the prerogative of the chair to control the meeting remains. So I still want to have an open and democratic process, but I would hope that members would take it in the spirit it's intended and not abuse that privilege. Thank you. So I will take members of the public first on each item, then I'll take councillors afterwards. That's the way I intend to run things from now on. I think that's a fair way of doing it. So that moves us on to agenda item 6. I believe we have the presentation from the Cabinet member first, don't we? From memory. It's been that long since I've done one. There's been an election in between. Councillor Golby.
Brief. It's to extend an existing agreement that we have with Cornerstone to lease 18 properties that we currently use as temporary accommodation. We are extending this due to financial factors, and also the fact that we are expecting when we start coming out of COVID restrictions further, that we are going to continue to need these properties. They are on a lease basis, so we can review them at the end of the lease period, and it's also more economical for the council to do this than to put people up into temporary accommodation. There is an approximate saving to the council of £162,000 over a 12-month period, as is contained in the report, and I'm happy to support these proposals going forward. I don't think there's really much else to say on the report. Yes, Chair, I'm formally proposing that this report be taken and passed by Cabinet.
And does that receive a seconder? Okay, thank you, Councillor Evans. We have Councillor Condacor.
Sorry, Chair, that it's number 7 I want to speak on, not 6. Somebody.
Which is Councillor Condacor. Is there anything from yourself, Councillor Watkins?
Not really, Chair. It's a very sensible thing to do. We are expecting more people to go into, well, we would be expecting more people to go into temporary accommodation, so I fully support it.
Okay, thank you. Any officer wish to come in at this point? No? Any member? Councillor Evans.
Absolutely endorse this report. I think one of the things that we have an issue with in Bedworth is a lot of families who have to go into temporary accommodation who are moved outside of the borough. I think as far as Tamworth in some cases. So I'm pleased that we're sticking to this, and if it means that some of those families in the borough have to go into temporary accommodation, at least they stay within the borough. And of course, savings in the region of £180,000 are of course welcome during the financial difficulties that we are experiencing. So I fully support the report.
Councillor Evans. I see no other member indicate, so we've had it moved and seconded. Can I have a vote from all those in favour of the recommendations? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. That moves us on to agenda item number 7, which is Councillor Smith.
7 is the Community Infrastructure Levy update. In October 2020, the Council consulted on a draft Community Infrastructure Levy charge, or SIL charging schedule. The levy would be a charge on new development and would predominantly replace the existing Section 106 arrangements for securing financial contributions to go towards infrastructural improvements. Officers have considered the consultation responses attached in Appendix A, undertaken further analysis and compared a SIL context against the Section 106 context by analysing amounts generated for various applications. That detailed analysis is set out in the report. Consultants from the Planning Officers Society were also appointed to undertake independent, critical friend analysis, and their report is attached at Appendix B. Based on the work undertaken, it's concluded that SIL would not generate more infrastructure funding on larger scale developments compared to the existing Section 106 arrangements. While SIL would generate more infrastructure funding on smaller scale developments, the analysis undertaken indicates that any potential financial benefits of implementing SIL may be marginal. Given the cost and resources associated with SIL examination and implementation, it's considered that SIL would not be beneficial in the round compared to existing Section 106 arrangements. The Government has also proposed that SIL and Section 106 would be replaced by a new National Infrastructure Levy, and so progress in SIL may result in abortive work. I therefore propose the recommendations as set out in the report.
Councillor Golby has seconded that. I have Mrs Condacore.
Generally, really, we seem to be very, very late in having sort of even thought about implementing a SIL. And I've said all the way along in various responses that having 0 rate on the strategic sites was madness, and that seems to be sort of borne out by these figures, saying that there are far better outcomes for smaller developments. That's because they actually charge SIL, and the larger ones, which are the ones that actually need more infrastructure, weren't. So it's a very tricky situation, because I understand you don't want to spend loads of money out if it's going to, then change the system. But there have been quite a few applications that I've been involved with where there claims that against the developer for funds, we've lost completely simply because they've been told they're not SIL compliant, and because we haven't got a SIL infrastructure, a SIL setup. And so I'm just worried that we're going to lose a lot more in the interim until such time as this National Infrastructure Levy, or whatever it turns out to be called, actually comes in, because these things always take a long while. So I don't know what the right answer is, but I'm not sure that all the options have really been seriously considered, because having a 0 rate on the strategic sites, which are the large ones, it just seems to be very, very stupid as far as I'm concerned. The other thing I read in there, at least 15% of the SIL receipt from a new development would have to be used to support the development of the neighbourhood. Well, surely that's the whole point of Section 106 or SIL or whatever, that it actually is used, the money is used to mitigate the ill effects potentially of a development on an area. So, only 15%. And the way it was written was as if that was too much. Surely it should be even more, because most of the money derived from a development, aside from things like hospital funds, should actually be being spent in the area that's actually getting the development. Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. Any member? Councillor Condacore.
Thank you. Thank you. Doesn't actually help us. The Section 106 has to be for a purpose, and unfortunately in Weddington, where we're now 25% bigger than the average ward in the borough, we have got very little infrastructure out of 106. The CCG is sitting on £900,000 of Section 106 or Section 106 that is about to be paid, £900,000, and is sitting on 1 point something hectares of land to build a doctor's surgery, and that simply isn't happening. And we face the risk of actually that money being paid back to the developer and the land given back to the developer. At least with SIL, as I understand it, if the development needs a GP surgery and the CCG can't be asked to actually sort it out, we can at least spend the money on something else. But all this money that just sits around for 10 years or so in an account of a CCG or whatever the Section 106 was for, and doesn't get spent, gets given back. We've also had a 10% rise in property prices since the pandemic started. 10%, which means it is now very viable for us to be charging SIL. This 0 rate was based on an analysis for house prices and profitability quite a few years ago. I don't know when the Dixon SIL whatever was done, but this is very, very out of date. House prices have shot up, particularly in places like Weddington for the new housing, and I believe we should be charging a SIL, because then if we need a GP surgery and a school and a this and a that, and the various people who get given the Section 106 money don't sit on it for a decade and end up giving it back. We've been badly let down by infrastructure in Wellington. The only thing we've had is a school, which is only going to have 4 classrooms in use so far. And I do believe SIL will give this council more control over these funds. Thank you, Chair.
Points of clarification? No. Any other member? Councillor Watkins.
SIL's a bit of a complicated one. I think, especially with you having lots of new councillors on, I think it would be worth you doing some training for the SIL going forward, so that everybody can get their head around this. It's not an easy one. It's not an easy one to understand. But as Councillor Concourse says about the S106 money as well, that does need to be spent, but we have got officers on that do monitor that closely. The S106 is a good scheme. The SIL, I'm still not convinced about. I've been looking at it for years. I just cannot get my head around that. And like I say, more training needed, especially with new councillors on board. Thank you.
Very much. Any points of clarification? No. Any member of the Cabinet? Councillor Evans.
Point. I think Councillor Gutteridge may have been coming in to say the same thing, so I do apologise, Councillor Gutteridge. But with reference to the Parks Department, I am aware that we now have an officer on board now who is directly responsible for coming in to look at, I think, all planning applications from 2015 to look at what Section 106 hasn't been spent, so we can claw that back, in the next few months to try and get that spent. And I will ensure that those officers look at the applications in Weddington to make sure that there is Section 106 monies there that may potentially need to be spent.
Councillor Evans. Yes, we've got a new 106 officer in the green space, parks and green space, for the management of the 106 capital projects, and I've asked him to look at them strongly and see if we can claim back money, because I'm led to believe that we've not claimed money back from quite a few years ago, which we are entitled to, which would ease our parks and ground care budget considerably. Thank you.
No. For my part, I do believe that this is a balanced decision between 106 and SIL, but the evidence for me is quite striking when we look at page 24 of the Cabinet agenda. There is a balance here between smaller applications and larger scale applications, and in particular if we look at Weddington Road for the 775 dwellings, even though that application was refused, there was a potential that we could have, if it was approved, with SIL versus 106, lost in the region of £2 million on infrastructure, which I believe is a significant chunk of money that, as Councillor Condical has already alluded to, would benefit the residents of the Weddington ward in particular. And it would have been disastrous, in my view, if that had been allowed to go through and we'd have lost £2 million. Given the fact that the borough plan, rightly or wrongly, and many of us in the new administration have many issues with the borough plan, but it is, whether we like it or not, the policy of the council at this time. And there are a large number of houses and large-scale developments to come forward. And so the preponderance of applications and money is going to be on the larger scale applications. So that leads me to believe that at the moment, it is better to look at using the 106 method rather than SIL. I do take it as a balancing act, but I believe it is our absolute responsibility to make sure that if we are taking this development, we maximise the income that we get from those dwellings that come forward. I do take on board Councillor Watkins' point. There are a large number of members new, but there are also a number of members who haven't done planning anyway, and Section 106 and SIL can be a minefield to navigate. So if we could incorporate that into the new training plan, because I know that members of planning recently had a training session which was open to all members, but it couldn't give an overview of every little thing. And we have had in the past training sessions on SIL and 106 and what you can and can't charge for. I do believe that is a worthwhile exercise in looking at for all members coming forward. So I'm happy to accommodate that if members are happy to accept that as a friendly amendment. I think that is worthwhile doing. So having said all that, we have the recommendations in front of us with the amendment taking on board Councillor Watkins' point. Can I have a show of hands from all those in favour? Okay, that was carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. That leads us on to agenda item number 8, which is on page 31. Again, this is you, Councillor Smith.
It's the Borough Plan Review, the Issues and Options Consultation. The Council is committed to undertake a Borough Plan Review, and the timescales associated with the review are set out in the Council's adopted Local Development Scheme. The main purpose of the review is to assess the adopted Borough Plan against the latest 2019 NPPF and associated guidance. The Issues and Options is an initial statutory stage to kickstart the review process. The consultation document focuses on key policy changes since the Borough Plan was drafted, as well as the proposals set out in the recent Government Planning White Paper. Key issues are examined in detail and options are proposed for addressing those issues. Housing need is a major issue of specific focus for the Borough Plan Review, but other issues such as the duration of the plan period, employment land, greenbelt, town centres, infrastructure, biodiversity and design are also examined in detail. This consultation is proposed to run for 8 weeks from 11th of June to the 6th of August and will give residents an opportunity to have their say on the fundamental questions to be considered as part of the Borough Plan Review process. Cabinet is requested to approve the Issues and Options document and its accompanying sustainability appraisal for public consultation as per the recommendations in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Propose the recommendations, and I am more than happy to second them, and I'll speak on the item later. I believe we have Mrs. Condacourt to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, it's a necessity to be reviewing the borough plan, so I'm all in favour of getting that in flow as soon as possible. My main concern was really as to how it was going to be publicised and things, because in 5.2 it says the consultation will also be advertised via the council's social media channels and via the community forums. Well, currently we haven't had a community forum for 18 months, probably longer than that. I lose track and things. So there's no mention of a statement of community involvement. Now, there was a consultation on that, which I also responded to and things. So I think there are a lot more channels that need to be used for making sure that it's really widely, understood and you actually get responses, because some of the items further along on today's agenda, the response rate is very, very poor, and I just want to know how you're going to actually make sure people actually know about it, because yes, obviously social media is important, but that only reaches a small proportion of the population. Thank you.
Clarification. This is clarification, not question. It's just clarification. Councillor Smith.
We are in the process of also organising a series of events across the borough, and the public it'll be widely advertised and the public will be encouraged to come along. It's not fixed yet, but we are looking at times around the 5:30 to 7 o'clock, so it'll fit in with people's working practice, which wasn't the case with the original borough plan. So I think it will be widely publicised. We'll be encouraging people to come and have a look at the displays at the events. So I think the response should be quite good.
Helps if I turn that on. Is there a clarification point, Councillor Guttridge?
Mrs. Condacourt, if possible, how she would like us to go out for consultation. What are her thoughts? Where does she think we're not doing it correctly?
Well, actually, there's no reference in the paperwork to the statement of community involvement, which sort of specifies who should get, information and things. And it was, seemed to be reliant very much on community forums, which aren't happening at the moment. So it was just really just bringing it up. Things, obviously, a lot of councillors do newsletters and things. So it, I know it's just after the election and things, but it'd be really good if, you as councillors could actually, get newsletters out to your residents, because, I just think of people like my parents who don't do social media, don't pick up anything. I keep an eye on social media back home, simply so I can tell my mum, oh, this is happening, that's happening and things. So it's just trying to get it out there. There's no easy solution because we don't have free newspapers anymore, things. But, your side was very much complaining that the Labour hadn't, consulted very well. So I'm just saying, make sure you don't fall into the same trap. Thank you.
I'm advised that at paragraph 5.1 on page 37, there is reference to the statement of community involvement in there. So that is something which we are looking at. I'm not going to go around the houses about this, but I do wish to assure you that we are very aware of the track record under the previous administration, and that we are looking at all the routes available to us to try and do that. Because I, for one, have development in my ward, as does Councillor Gutteridge, as a number of others, and we believe that we do need to try and get out there as much as we can. COVID is a complicating factor. It's not an excuse, but we do have to try and see how we can do that in a COVID secure and acknowledge the challenges that presents. So we are looking at what we can do on that front. But thank you, Mrs. Condacourt, for your contribution. So that leads me on to councillors not on the Cabinet. Councillor Condacourt.
I massively welcome the change of ideas and actually doing this far better than we've done in the past. I know one of the consultation events before was actually at the same time as a full council meeting, and I know the one in Arbury was about one day into the consultation. Councillor Golby had to tell her residents, it's happening now, which wasn't really very fair on anyone. In terms of the detail, it's too early to read all the details, but there are a few things going on which we should bear in mind during the consultation. One is the Office of Statistics Regulation that has just released a report after the election on how dubious the estimates were for Coventry. Estimating population for somewhere like Nuneaton is fairly easy because people tend to live here for a long while, but the Office of Statistics Regulation said Coventry's population is not plausible effectively, and Andrew Street was on the radio this morning talking about there being 5,000 too many houses in the projections for Coventry. So I do hope we incorporate the latest evidence from that review. I'm most pleased that the target is talking about 400. I've always said that the base target should be about 300, and obviously you need some catching up for previous non-delivery. So I think we are on a far better basis. And then there's also other issues like air quality at the inspection in public. I think quite a few of us were talking about air quality, and this Borough Council had very little data to actually argue with the inspector, and things like the Newtown Road in Bedworth, which is very, very polluted nowadays going into the malfunction junction. So I do think alongside this piece of work and consultation, we do need to take another look at some of the base data like air quality, which is absolutely key to actually keeping people safe as we have excessive development around the borough. And finally, if you allow me, I just wanted to mention sustainability, because currently we only have one thing to do for sustainability, which is align houses for solar gain. I put the big windows on the south side. We really should be building with solar panels, ground source heat pumps. So I hope this consultation will allow people to make a step change in what this borough does in terms of a green and safe environment. Thank you, Chair.
Clarification. Councillor Gutteridge.
Me when you said malfunction junction in Bedworth. Can I have some clarification of whereabouts that is, please? Because I can't see a malfunction junction on the road map.
nickname for the one at Tesco's by that fake bit of coal. You know, where the Newtown Road comes, it's a four-way sequence that tends to take a long while to cycle around the four ways. And there's usually quite a queue down the Newtown Road when I've ever cycled through Bedworth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Condacour. Councillor Watkins?
Yeah, you're doing the review, really, to be honest. But one thing that did come up at the planning training the other day was that we're getting near to the 5-year housing supply. What I would ask you to do is work closely with our housing department, especially Councillor Golby on this, and look at the types of houses we need, because on our waiting list it's more of the 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, things like that, the flats and things like that. One suggestion I could do for you of getting the message out there would be perhaps to try and do something virtually. I know the police do something virtually at the minute, and the police seem to be getting a good response off it, and I think we just need to learn, watch others and move on with the times. Thank you, Chair.
From Councillor Watkins? No. Any officer wish to come in at this point? Ash?
Some assurance to the public speakers. So the statement of community involvement, that's effectively the minimum that the council have to undertake. And we have been given a clear steer as officers that the expectation is to do quite thorough consultation. So what isn't prescribed in this report is how that's undertaken. But as Councillor Smith has articulated, and Councillor Guttridge, we're open to ideas, and I can assure the speakers that officers are working hard, both in planning and communications, to facilitate that. And we'll ultimately do our best to ensure that the consultation is as thorough as possible. Thank you, Chair.
I'll come in at this point as the seconder of the recommendation before us. I am more than delighted to second this tonight. It is the first step on our manifesto pledge to review the unfair borough plan, which has been foisted on many communities, and we are under no illusions about the scale of the challenge before us, but I am confident the administration that I am leading is determined to get this right and learn the lessons from the mistakes of the past. And I can assure Councillor Watkins and both Mrs and Councillor Condacour that whilst I believe it was an unfortunate turn of phrase from the council at the time at the inspection was that a third-rate pass is still a pass, I can assure you that this cabinet does not take a third-rate pass as what we will be aiming to deliver. Indeed, Councillor Smith is looking at all options on how we can encourage greater participation. He has had steer from both myself as leader and other members of the Cabinet, and I am more than willing that wherever possible, if we can do online virtual meetings, to do so. I think they may present slightly more challenges with the number of people and how you would control such a forum, but I'm sure officers can look into the feasibility of doing that. If it's possible, and it can be done in a fair and open way that enables every single person to participate without certain parties dominating to the exclusion of all other interested members who are the silent majority, then I'm more than happy to incorporate that. Another point to highlight, and this is flowing on from what Councillor Condacour said, is that if you read the report and the consultation, it does highlight that this Cabinet is determined to move away from the Memorandum of Understanding with Coventry and the rest of Warwickshire. Indeed, I share Councillor Condacour's concerns about the Coventry numbers and the great disparity between the averages from the Warwickshire districts compared to Coventry, almost 10% in some cases, is clearly ludicrous. And we are investigating all options as a Cabinet about how we can deal with that, and that will be coming before the Council at some future point. We have looked at accelerating the rate of the review, and having read the proposed questions within the review, which is going out to consultation, I think there's 30 odd in total. They are in a lot more clear spoken English than in previous consultation publications, and I'm hopeful that residents will see that we have tried to adopt a plain English approach in how we do this review. And as a sign of the commitment that this administration places on this review and in engaging with residents, I have been clear as leader in giving a steer to my Cabinet members that throughout the consultation process, that Cabinet members will, at least one Cabinet member will attend each and every single consultation exercise, and where possible, more will attend, because unlike the last round of consultations where there was no representation from the controlling group to take the quite frankly the battering from residents, we are quite prepared to listen to residents and engage in that dialogue with them. We are not going to hide behind officers. We are actually going to be out there leading from the forefront of this review. So I am proud and pleased that one of the first Cabinet items before us is delivering on a manifesto commitment that we put forward. So I am hopeful that all members of the Cabinet will approve it, and we can go forward with the consultation, not a third-rate consultation as in the past, but a first-rate consultation given the circumstances we're in. And officers are clear that they are getting more of a direction now on how they want to proceed, and that is how we will continue. Any member? Councillor Golby.
It's just to, well, you've picked up on a few of the things that I was going to mention anyway about the memorandum of understanding and the language of the consultation, because that was quite an issue last time. People didn't understand the documents. One of the major complaints was you had to be a planning expert to even respond to the consultation, which wasn't really feasible for most people. I did attend the consultations in my ward, and I intend to do that again. So that's not a problem, that's a standard issue for me. And we've also reviewed locations as well as time, because location was also an issue, particularly in my ward, where there was a single location and it wasn't very appropriate for people to get there in the time that was allowed. So again, we are looking at all sorts of different angles. I mean, we did make enough noise about the consultation and we had lots of plans then, which we can now actually implement. So there's no fear of that. We're pretty on the ball. And housing types, yep, I've already been in discussions about housing types, future need, where we need to look and what we need to look at. So that's something else that I'm already picking up just to allay any fears that you might have on that. It's not all going to be 4 and 5 bed big houses. We, I do appreciate we need some smaller ones as well. So yeah, there is a lot of work going on, and there's a lot of work covering various disciplines, and we are all rolling our sleeves up and getting stuck in with it. As you say, first manifesto commitment, and we are off and running at a pace. So glad that this has come up now. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Evans.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Like you say, I'm delighted that this is the first Cabinet meeting of this new administration and we're getting on with the job and we're delivering our pledge to review the Borough plan. I think one of the comments I'd like to make to Councillor Smith, if I may, is that the last consultation event we had, I feel particularly in Bedworth and I suspect in other places in the Nuneaton, a lot of the consultation events were held in areas where developments weren't taking place. What we need to ensure is that we're using those facilities where the developments are taking place, because those are the communities that are going to be most impacted. I'm pleased to see the amendments, if you like, with the questions, like Councillor Golby said. A lot of our residents are not planning experts, so I'm pleased to see that they've been put forward in a more simplistic way. And as a Cabinet member, I look forward to attending these sessions, and I would be delighted to help any member of the public in the borough in supporting them in submitting stuff to the consultation.
Councillor Evans. Before I bring Councillor Smith back in, any other member of the Cabinet who hasn't yet spoken? No. Councillor Smith.
Back to those comments from Carl there, and just to reassure him, we are actually in Bedworth going to be in the woodlands for one of the events, which I think was a big complaint. This review will be different. We're determined to make it different. We've learnt from the lessons of the previous administration, and we will deliver a first-class review of the borough plan, rest assured of that.
So you know all the members of Cabinet, so I am moving to the vote. All members in favour of the recommendations? That's carried, thank you. That moves us on to agenda item 9, which is the consultation on the Gypsy and Traveller site allocations, DPD. Again, Councillor Smith, that's you.
Yes, thank you. Through the adopted borough plan to produce a Gypsy and Traveller site allocations development plan document. This document would identify and allocate land for future traveller sites. The first part of producing such a document is the issues and options stage, and this identifies the key issues facing the provision of new Gypsy and Traveller sites, along with different options for the provision. To support the document, a new assessment of accommodation needs for the travelling communities has been commissioned, and this updates the assessment used to set the need figures published in the borough plan. The borough plan sets out a need for at least a further 39 residential and 5 transit pitches by 2031-32, whereas the new assessment just completed advises there's a need for 16 additional residential pitches only by 2036-37 to meet the needs of those defined as travellers. This may increase by a further 4 pitches to meet cultural needs in the borough. Cabinet approval is being sought to consult on the issues and options document and its accompanying sustainability appraisal and accommodation assessment. I therefore propose the recommendations as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gutteridge. We have Mrs Condacore to speak.
So, yeah, I'm glad this is actually finally coming forward. I mean, it's a great pity it wasn't actually done at the same time as the borough plan, because I worry that there's going to be a problem actually finding suitable land, because most of it seems to have been allocated for housing and employment and what have you in the borough plan. But that's something we'll just have to, deal with when it gets there. The other question I was going to have, but Councillor Smith, there's a missing word in the documentation. And I didn't understand what it meant, because it said to meet the cultural in the borough, but he added cultural needs in the borough. And it makes more sense. Okay, thank you.
Points of clarification? No? Any non-Cabinet member? Councillor Condacore.
With you, we have we have a large number of travellers in the borough, many of which live on permanent sites and cause absolutely no nuisance to anyone around. And we obviously have problems with travellers coming in causing sometimes a massive nuisance. I do hope we are careful to distinguish between the vast majority who actually are responsible and live peacefully and law-abidingly in the borough, and the very few that come and cause trouble and vandalise sites like the Ambleside Club. So I do hope the language and the consultation is done very carefully so that we don't scare people and misinterpret what goes on. I'm really dubious also about some of the numbers in terms of need, because obviously a lot of people in the travelling community are starting to settle down. They're starting to move into mainstream housing. So I do think we need to look carefully as to how much of that is happening and how much that then frees up our existing travellers' sites. Because it is sometimes a hard way of life, and particularly as people get older, they may be moving into permanent housing and causing problems on the housing waiting list, but actually then freeing up plots. And the final thing I just want to mention is we have 3 canals in this borough: Oxford Canal, Ashby de la Douche, and a bit of the Coventry Canal. And we do have a lot of people travelling through on canal boats. So I do actually think it's probably an area where we should look at making sure we've got enough provision. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
A couple of points you made. Bargee travellers are actually in there if you look at the document. So there is a question, I think, on bargee travellers. The numbers, the assessment, needs assessment that was done, has, as you say, reduced the numbers by, I think, somewhere in the region of 24 as a need over a much longer period, and that was done because of the fact that there are gypsies going into housing and freeing up spaces. So that assessment, needs assessment, was crucial to reduce those numbers and come up with a real need. There is also a chance that some of that need can be settled within current sites and not take up more green belt, which has been a problem in the past, certainly around places like Bulkington and Barnacle.
Smith. Okay, thank you, Councillor Watkins. Officers, any comeback? No. Any Cabinet member? No. Just from my point of view, to welcome the report, and I think it is great work, because I know that in opposition, Councillor Smith was doing work with officers about the Gypsy and Traveller needs assessment from the Conservative point of view, because we did have concerns where that was going, because historically the pattern seemed to be that because you have a larger number of Gypsy and Travellers in one area, that all the needs assessments which were done over a larger geographical area tended to put a greater need in the areas which already had larger numbers of Gypsy and Traveller sites. So the fact that that has been able to be reduced from work we have been looking at with officers in opposition and has come to fruition here, I think will go some way to pleasing residents as well, that we aren't looking at something which may seem insurmountable. And I suppose, taking on board Mrs Condacor's point that it's a shame that it wasn't conducted with the original borough plan, the other side of the coin to that is, if it had been done within the existing borough plan, we would have been looking at the greater number of Gypsy and Travellers. So there's pluses and minuses on either side, but I think in this case, not having done it at the same stage as the borough plan has probably actually helped us in this regard. So I think it is a welcome reduction. And I look forward to seeing the development of this policy moving forwards and what residents have to say. So, unless there's anything else, can I have a show of hands of all those in favour, please? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. That then moves us on to agenda item 10, which are I'll say it in full, supplementary planning documents on parking standards and conservation areas appraisal and management plans. Again, Richard, this is you.
Planning documents, once adopted, provide additional guidance to policies in the adopted borough plan. The Transport Demand Management Matters Parking Standards SPD provides up-to-date car parking and cycle parking standards for various development types and the specification required for their delivery. It also reinforces the requirement for delivery of electric vehicle charging points. The Conservation Area Appraisals and Management Plan SPDs provide an up-to-date assessment and proposals for their future management of the 5 conservation areas in Abbey, Bedworth, Bulkington, Hawkesbury and Nuneaton Town Centre. Supplementary planning documents are subject to statutory consultation. Officers will be required to consider the responses received and then finalise versions for consideration by Cabinet. If approved, the documents will then be tabled at full council for adoption. After adoption, further legal work will need to be undertaken to formalise some of the conservation area proposal. It is therefore proposed that the documents are approved for public consultation as per the recommendations in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Opposed it. Is there a seconder?
I'll second that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Guttridge. Mrs Condacor.
Excited I am to actually see this finally coming to Cabinet, because I've actually got emails regarding this going back to 2010 from the Cycle Forum, and we were told it had to wait till it was borough plan, and now umpteen years on we've finally got it. The one thing that I just want to sort of push from a cyclist point of view, it says new cycle parking standards will help encourage greater uptake of cycling within the borough. and I agree that to a certain extent that it is true, because you don't want to cycle somewhere and then not have anywhere to leave your bike. But it is only one small bit of the picture, and the more important thing is actually having safe cycle routes, and that is not something that I've seen coming across in the Transforming Nuneaton and other projects. Cycling provision is actually a lot worse than we've got currently from the plans that I was shown, were shown to us at the Cycle Forum. So I really ask that you put cycling as a much higher thing in all the plans for the town centre, be it the road thingy from Transforming Nuneaton and things, because it's no good having decent cycle parking if you can't safely get to it. We've got some very stupid situations around the town as it is at the moment. For example, coming here to the town hall, there's cycle racks outside the town hall, but the cycle route actually finishes several yards before then, just by the crossing. So you actually have to keep cycling to in a no cycling area to actually reach the cycle parking, and the same happens in Bedworth town centre. The cycle parking's up by the All Saints Church, and you're not actually allowed to cycle to the cycle parking. So these things need to be very much tied together. It's not just a freestanding thing. In terms of parking, I haven't looked at the whole of the thing. Obviously, I will respond to the consultation, but we need to look seriously also at parking provision on new developments, because they seem to only allow two parking spaces per house and things, and never seem to consider what happens when people actually have visitors. And I've seen it, and it shouldn't be happening on new developments. It's bad enough that it happens on places like St Nicholas Park, which have been built 30, 40 years ago. But it is something that's really important for how a whole area actually functions. Thank you.
No? Any non-cabinet member? Councillor Condacourt.
The cycling standards in this document and parking standards updated. I think one good example was yesterday's planning meeting, where we had the Manor Court dental surgery, which we've now determined, so I hope I can treat it as an example. But that's an area with very low car ownership. The car ownership in the Abbey ward and those wards around there is about 50%. And it's an ideal place, actually, to relieve the pressure. It's not forcing people to cycle, but at a dental surgery with, say, a few consultation rooms, you may have 8 patients there at a time. So if 2 of those are able to cycle, it does actually make the environment around there better. So it's really good to have some cycle standards, and I do hope they're flexed so that in areas where cycling, like Abbey ward and things, is obviously far more preferable, and we actually increase it further in areas with less parking, because it does mean a good modal shift and a better use of land. And particularly in a conservation area, you can paint the Sheffield steel things black or something, can make them far nicer than a car parking space. The one thing that's not in here, when we're talking about modal shift, is bus services. And so I think we've got car parking, we've got cycle racks, but we've got places like the Pingles and that dental surgery that had no bus service. So I think that also needs to be taken into consideration a lot better. And if we're starting to look at bigger developments, maybe that development should actually ask for a bus service. When we redevelop the Pingles, there's no bus service to the Pingles. There's bus services near the Pingles, but not. So I do think we need to really get a modal shift, because actually providing parking spaces cost us, or whoever the developer is, a lot of money, all that acreage. So I do think we need to make this 15% modal shift in the documents a reality. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Evans.
Did good bus connections to leisure facilities? The 74, the 78 stop at the Fleur de Lis pub.
A whole load of children. People do it, but it's not a good service.
Any officer? No. Oh, sorry. Still getting used to the new way, Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, just a couple of things, thanks, Chair. And again, with new councillors, I think that there'll be something good to do some training on. I have been speaking to Ash in the past about the parking provisions, and it is needed on the new developments because I think I'm right, and I'm sure you're correct me, Ash, is we haven't actually got an up-to-date one at the minute, and it's the new developments that are coming on board are 1 or 1 3/4 or something silly like that. So something like that does need to be done, especially on the new developments that are coming in. So yeah, good to see SPDs coming forward.
No. Any Cabinet member? Councillor Guthridge.
I've been to the last 2 cycle forums, which was hosted by Mrs Condacor and attended by various members from Warwickshire County Council. And the question I've asked at both meetings, could they tell me what use of the cycleways are there? What numbers are there? Have they got any figures? They've got some figures for the south of the county, but they haven't got any for the north of the county. So we don't know if the cycleways are being used to full capacity, half capacity, or no capacity. So I would like to know eventually about that. Also, I fully welcome the conservation areas. When I was a kid, I was brought up in Brokington, so I know Church Street very well because I was taken up there most Sunday afternoons to go to church, to Sunday school. And I like looking at the old buildings, and I hope the officers can help the householders now when they're coming to change windows or doors or roofs to see if we can appease the situation a little bit with them, because it's a costly job to put windows in, and they've got to put the correct windows in, the wooden windows. I, for instance, at the moment have got a pal of mine who lives in Rugby, and he's putting a new window, a bay window in his house, and it's over £5,000. So I fully welcome the conservation areas, and I think we've got to protect them for future generations. Thank you, Chair.
Member? No? Well, I welcome the report again because, as Councillor Condacor alluded to, the value of the conservation area action plans was seen in action last night. Now that that application is determined, I think it's okay to speak on it unless Phil tells me otherwise. And it was a good example of actually using documents and policies of this council to protect our heritage assets. And I think that is also something important moving forward, that we do actually, when you go around the various parts of our borough, have some fantastic heritage assets, which we probably don't do as much to celebrate and promote as we should do. But we have massive transformation projects on our hands in transforming Nuneaton and transforming Bedworth. And whilst that's my portfolio and I'm a massive champion of them, we can only move forward if we are also prepared to acknowledge our heritage and our history and protect the good so that future generations can also benefit from that. I mean, I was walking around Bulkington the other week and looking at the historic assets there by the church and across the road into the back of the village centre. And it would be a crying shame if those weren't protected. And likewise with many other areas in Bedworth, with the almshouses, and in Nuneaton too, with some of the architecture that we've had that we've managed to save after the decimation of the 50s and 60s. So I think moving forward, these action plans will add great value to the borough, and I look forward to seeing the consultation responses. Again, I think Councillor Watkins has a valid point about training. I think it's probably something to look at once we've had the consultation responses and they've actually been passed and approved by council, because otherwise it could be a moving feast depending on actually what comes out. But once they are approved, I have no objection to officers putting forward a training plan on them, because they will also highlight, I would hope, to members some of the hidden gems that we also have within our borough, and how vital they are to protect and what we are doing to protect them moving forward. So I'm more than happy to endorse the recommendations. Can we then have a show of hands in favour, please? Again, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item number 11, we have the Town Centres Area Action Plan, which is Councillor Smith. I think it's almost the Councillor Smith show tonight.
Yes,
Over to you.
Took a consultation on issues and options version of the Town Centres Area Action Plan between the 9th of October and 4th of December 2020. The responses received have been analysed and taken into account to produce the next version of the action plan. This next version contains a vision, objectives and policies covering the development strategy, design and opportunity sites for both towns. The action plan aligns with other council documents such as the Transforming Nuneaton Prospectus and Capacity Study and the Bedworth Town Centre Vision and the Leisure and Parks Planning Guidance work. Cabinet approval is being sought to consult on the publication document and its accompanying sustainability appraisal. Should approval be forthcoming, the next stages are to submit the action plan to the Secretary of State for independent examination and then for the Council to adopt the document. I therefore propose the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Does that receive a seconder? Councillor Evans, thank you. Mrs Condicle.
Thank you. Goes back to what I said earlier about consultation things, because reading it, the 8 responses we received, and I mean, on the doorstep, I don't know about you, but the town centre, well, obviously I was only canvassing in Nuneaton, but the state of the town centre came up time and time again. And so it's just really disappointing that the 8 responses and things, and if you look at who responded, it was, mostly people, Coal Authority, etc., etc. One member of the public, which was me, and it's not representative, is it, of the people using the town centre. So I don't know whether you can do something actually in the town centre and catch the people who are actually in the town centre somehow, not literally capture them, but you know what I mean, to actually get more responses and things, because, I mean, that's really quite sad, isn't it, that I was the only person of however many to actually look at it. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Condicore's point. She'll be very pleased to know that this will be part of the events, and we are looking to hold events on Market Day in both towns, both in Bedworth and in Nuneaton.
Any non-councillor, non-cabinet member?
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair. I
Condicore.
know who I am. It's really interesting to look through these documents. It would really help having coloured maps, because if you look at page 1108, that black and white map really doesn't read very well. And one thing I think we need to not forget are the plans for the back of the railway station. If we actually want to do a transport hub and do improvements, pedestrianise the front of the railway stations, there's a long-term ambition that the back of the railway station would have a drop-off point, kiss and pick up, those sort of things, at the back Wellington side of the railway station, which would relieve some of the pressure off. That is a long-term plan. I think it's £8 million. And that should be mentioned in the plan at least, so that actually we can see there's this vision here. And also I'll say again, cycling is really important to bring life into town centres. You obviously don't want cycling everywhere, it gets in the way of the market, but every development doesn't seem to have a cycling plan, and there doesn't seem to be a town centre cycling plan that's got universal adoption. So we're ending up like the Abbey Street development. They say, oh, there'll be no cycling through the development. Well, where are people going to cycle? Abbey Street, Queen's Road? Yeah, we do need a master plan which includes the cycling routes on, so that when we do the ring road works and we have cycling crossings across the ring road, they actually then link up to where the cycle parking is, or the route you want cyclists to take. And you can't stop cyclists. The best thing you can do is actually give them a nice design line, give them a nice way through, and then they will. The law-abiding cyclists will follow the legal route, but the cyclists will just go wherever. If there's a nice route from the south to the north, and a cross of some kind, people will naturally gravitate to cycling where you want them to. Whereas if there's no cycling master plan in the town centre, it will be chaos. You'll have signs saying cyclists dismount that everyone will ignore. So we do need to look at cyclists, and they actually carry a lot of money. Cyclists are quite often richer than motorists because it's cheaper to repair a bicycle. So they're actually an untapped market for town centres, and a lot of town centres do really well when they actually think about cycling in the town centre master plan. Thank you, Chair.
No? Thank you, Councillor Condacourt. Councillor Watkins? No. Okay, thank you. Okay. Any Cabinet member? Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. I will antic here. Page 61 of the report makes reference to the availability of consultation documents. Can we make sure those are extended to the Bedworth area office and perhaps the Borkington Community Library or the Community Centre, please? Thank you.
It was remiss of me again, I'll get used to this. Any officers? I think that's something that can be looked into from Councillor Evans' point of view. Now that we're at the end of all the consultation documents, I think it is actually a unique opportunity we have with this round of consultations and the events that we will be putting on, mainly around the review of the borough plan, but with so many other consultation events, I would hope and expect that we would be able to, as Councillor Smith has already said, have the other consultations all exhibited at the same time, and it would, certainly in my view, go some way to alleviating the concern, which is a justified concern from Mrs Condacourt about representativeness. You're never going to get everyone responding, but more than one response, thank you for identifying yourself in that one, does make it more representative, and the more data we have makes it better, and the more evidence we have to take when some of these documents end up going to the inspector in the examination. So we have a massive opportunity here to capitalise on the use of the review of the borough plan to encapsulate all of these consultation documents, which will make significant impacts on people's lives and quality of life, etc. And so doing so again with the town centres area action plan, as well as everything else in the previous agenda items, I think is well worth doing and money well worth spent if we can actually get more people involved through these events being put on primarily for the borough plan, but we should capitalise on that opportunity while we have it. I don't see any other member indicating, so I'll move to the vote. Can all those in favour please show? Thank you very much. That is unanimous. So Councillor Smith gets a rest now. So we move on to Councillor Croft.
Thank you, Chair. How could I possibly report that I'm presenting this evening? It's the quarterly performance report. It's exactly what it says on the tin, but it's so backward looking. We've got a new administration and we have to present a report on what the old administration did. So I intend to treat it as a snapshot of council as we inherited it, effectively, and the Cabinet are doing a job of disaggregating the problems that we've got, particularly in the delivering our future plan, from the necessary problems of COVID to the problems of corporate management that we need to address. The one thing I will say in specifics is that the big red light that is flashing for me in the report and the feedback I've had from officers across the piece is personnel and HR. We've got big problems, you can see it in the report, with return to works, with development reviews, and the feedback I've had on staff retention and staff recruitment that this council has. In short, the machine has to work if we're going to be making serious improvements to this council and to this borough, and it's not working as it should at the moment. So I'd just like to publicly telegraph that it's very much on Cabinet's radar. I believe a proposal for a new employment committee will be going through the A&S process to amend the Constitution very shortly, and we'll take the new policy proposals through that process. So I won't say too much more, because I know that we want alacrity, Councillor Watkins, but I'm happy to take any feedback back in the process of corporate improvement we want to do. Thank you very much, Chair. I'll move that be noted.
The report. Mrs Condacourt.
One of the things that I've flagged it up for numerous times with the previous Cabinet. Lack of an economic development officer, post is really, really key. And I've asked before, and I don't know whether it's the salary or just that there aren't that many people with those skills, or what it is, but getting someone in that post is going to be really, really key. The other things I picked out was there was a thing about the air quality action plan. I found it here in this great tome, 144 on page 1442. I don't know, obviously this is data from the end of March, and whether the action plan, because it said it was waiting for thing from consultants, and then it would be sent to DEFRA, and then completion likely summer 2021. Well, we're already almost the end of May, so we are the end of May, not almost. So I just wondered what the timescale there, and I would ask, please, 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 we've had an air quality action plan for many years, but we actually need one that's actioned, because it hasn't been. Every time it says, oh yes, in progress, and this goes on years. So really want that to actually be actioned and taken a much higher profile for related to planning things in particular. And the other thing that I picked out was, it said identify a suitable site for cemetery, and I just wondered if anyone was able to sort of tell me a bit more what's happened with the Ouston Road, because obviously knocked down the caretakers lodge or whatever it was called, and I haven't really heard much since. I don't know whether that part has actually been used up already, things. And the other thing was, it said about increase the council stock of commercial investment property. I would say that is seriously risky. So we don't know what's going to happen, things. So I would wait on that personally. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gutteridge.
I could answer Mrs Condicore for your questions. If you'd like to email me about the air quality, I have spoken to the environmental health people, Rachel and Andrew Snowden, and we are looking into that. It is behind, but due to COVID, and we're behind on quite a few other projects on that department. On the Ouston Road Cemetery, I've already had a visit with David Truslove. I am visiting the Marston Lane Cemetery this week, and I will come back to you on that. If you would like to email me your question, I will come back with the answers. And there is plenty of room at this present time in Ouston Road. Thank you.
Any non-cabinet member? Councillor Condicore.
Thank you. Yeah, as in inheriting this mess, but it is useful to give some pointers to where we should be going. And financial stuff has always been very hard to see as a scrutiny office member. At the moment, we've just got 4 reds and 3 greens on a front page and no financial information. And then the scrutiny committees don't get any financial information as well that's up to date, and quite often there's lags of like 3 months, so he's quite often a quarter behind. So I do hope we'll get that flowing better. And the second point is we declared a climate emergency, and I really do think we want a page or half a page to actually monitor in our performance report where we're doing on our action plans for that, and if we're making progress, because there's no point in having a plan that sits on the shelf. We need a plan that has an update in this report. It doesn't need to be a long update, but just to say we're doing X, Y or Z, just to make sure we're motoring along on this emergency, because it's not an emergency if we don't take any notice of it. Thank you, Chair.
No? Councillor Watkins?
You're welcome to this one, Councillor Croft. You'll find out soon, very soon, that it's not easy to get people to work for the authority. Some of the posts have gone out more than once and have not been taken. Probably because of the wages we pay, don't know, can't answer you that. But what you will find out is it's not easy to get people to work for us. It's not a mess that we've left you in, it's the mess that's there because people don't want to work for us. So good luck with that one and getting everybody employed here, and looking forward to seeing it in future. Thanks.
Clarification? No? Anything from the officers? Simone?
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to draw your attention to the executive summary at Appendix A, which is page 68 on my agenda. So that does set out a number of positive aspects as well as the areas for improvement that have already been mentioned. But in terms of positive aspects, our benefit claims have been very good during the year and well above the DWP benchmark for performance. Our working days lost to short-term sickness have also been better than our measure, which, given that we've been in a global pandemic for the last 12 months, I think is quite remarkable. And our percentage of invoices paid on time has also been well above our target range. There are then some areas for improvement as well. Short-term return to work has been mentioned. I would just like to point out that the rolling average days complete short-term return to work interviews is 3.6 days, so it is only that rolling average is only just above our target range of 3 days. And again, as already been mentioned, our delivering our future monitoring, it is below the target measure, but that has been largely due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Management team has just reviewed the delivering our future action plan for the next 12 months and plan to bring that forward to Cabinet probably in June. And then also just to note, in terms of the year-end outturn information that isn't included here, that is just because of the timescales in completing our accounts, because it's year-end, but that is on the forward plan for June, and we will be bringing that forward to June Cabinet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Simone. Any member of the Cabinet? No, well, I think there are some successes that we do need to celebrate that are there, because we have been through a global pandemic, as Simone has highlighted, and the fact that benefit claims processing is under the benchmark, and also the fact that we are paying invoices on time. When people have been struggling financially due to the effects of the pandemic, they will have made significant impacts on those most affected, so those who need the benefits to be able to continue if they've perhaps lost their job in the aftermath of the COVID pandemic, and also for businesses who have been particularly shell-shocked during the COVID pandemic, when they have or have not been able to open, and cash flow and supply is of critical importance to them. So it is important to acknowledge those areas, but there are areas for improvement which we're already looking at. We are literally less than 3 weeks into an administration, and we are having in-depth conversations with officers about these issues. I didn't quite receive the infamous Liam Byrne letter on my in-tray from the previous leader saying there is no money left, but I might as well have done, and so we have to try and find ways of funding services and delivering the manifesto commitments. And I think it's a shame actually that the previous administration did not look into why we aren't retaining staff, and these are staff in some of the actually critical business posts that we need, such as legal and planning policy in particular, which means that we've had a brain drain from this authority in previous years, and it is the financial decisions of the previous administration that have left a significant impact, such as hiking car parking charges time after time, which then reduces the income, like the climbing tower, which was the white elephant and cost us money, and ended up getting rid of critical services like the play rangers. So I think the previous administration have a lot to answer for, and to say good luck is all well and good, Councillor Watkins, but at the end of the day, the failures were under the previous administration's watch, and it is yet again a Conservative administration having to pick up the mess of a Labour administration. Whether it be nationally or locally, the result is the same, and we are determined that we will do that to try and deliver on our promises, but also secure services for the future. And it is only by looking at our performance, and officers are working hard on areas, and it's not their fault that they haven't got the business critical roles such as legal and planning policy and planning officers, etc. But that was a conscious decision of the administration many years ago. So we will be watching, and we will be looking for improvements, and we've already had those conversations. And there will be more conversations coming forward as well. So the recommendation is to note the report. It's been moved and seconded. We will move to the vote. All those in favour of noting the report? Okay, that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. That then moves us on to agenda item 13, which was circulated after the publication of the main agenda, but hopefully all members have had an opportunity to read the report. Just find my paperwork up here. So this report is seeking permission from the Cabinet to proceed with a bid for £115,000 from the Welcome Back Fund, which has been awarded to the Borough Council, and we actually now have to put forward specific projects that we want to spend under that and then gain financial approval, on the basis that, as I understand it, if we have to pay out initially, then we recoup that from government at a later date. And we have to have the business case submitted by no later than the 30th of May. So that's why it's marked not for calling and has had to be considered by Cabinet under the urgent procedure and has been signed off by the relevant OSP chair. There are a number of items in the report under paragraph 4.1 in the table, and I believe that these are very welcome initiatives to try and help with the Welcome Back Fund and making our town centres and village centres more appetising and appealing and bringing people back in. And indeed, a number of them are actually things which we put forward in our manifesto, and I look forward to, subject to being successful with the bid from government, being able to implement these, as again it would be another manifesto pledge and commitment delivered. So we are looking at £40,000 for deep cleans of the town centres in Nuneaton and Bedworth and in Bulkington. We are looking at facilitating the trial of Market Stall in All Saints Square in Bedworth for 6 months to see what impact that has and the popularity and uptake that gets from both potential traders but also shoppers. Replacement or refurbishment of waste bins in Nuneaton and Bedworth town centres, a number of which haven't been done since we were last in control in 2008. The repainting of benches in the town centres. Use of hoardings and graphics on selected empty properties, which I'm hoping will be able to highlight the Transforming Nuneaton and Bedworth agenda and promote what we're doing on those fronts, which I think will be very welcome because it then gives residents an opportunity to see what we are looking at doing, and we don't just end up with derelict areas in the town centres which are off-putting. And an extension of COVID advisors to the end of January 2022. That is, of course, depending on how the COVID pandemic continues and the changes in any potential regulations and legislation that may come forward as lockdown and social distancing eases, all of which totals £115,000. I am more than happy to propose those as the portfolio holder and chair because I believe that they will have significant boosts and benefits for all of our commercial centres of Nuneaton, Bedworth and Bulkington. And based on the feedback I have had from walking around all of those places in the past 3 or 4 weeks, they are very much welcome and are being called for by both businesses and traders alike. So I'm happy to propose those from the chair. Does that receive a seconder? Councillor Croft, thank you. Our public speaker is Mrs. Condacor. Okay, so I was told you were. Sorry if it's a mistake. Any non-cabinet member, Councillor Condacor.
Thank you very much. Deep clean of the town centre. I asked the town centre manager about it well before budget time, so it's most welcome. One thing that'd be really useful, in the days of Alan Ottey, our town centre manager, they did these walkabouts where a stranger who's new to the town, and he walks into the town and actually, or she, and actually makes some notes about how easy it was to get into the town and what things they find and things to make it welcoming or not welcoming. So I think a lot of these things we're spending this money on will add to that. And I do hope as part of the cleaning and stuff, we actually focus on the experience of someone walking into town from the railway station or the bus station. Things like signage, making clear where the museum is and the toilets and things like that. And I do hope some of the things like the hoardings and graphics we're going to put on shops will feature things like the museum and George Eliot. I think there could be multiple uses for these things. And we really, if we are going to try and generate more people visiting the town centre and this welcome back, we do need to do it with this sort of, was it mystery shopper type eyes? Yeah, even if we just ask a friend from somewhere, just come to Nuneaton for a day and mystery shop, so we actually make sure we get this stuff right. Thank you, Chair.
Any points of clarification? Councillor Golby.
Pleased to know that I did actually already do that this weekend, and I was feeding back to you with pictures of things that needed to be looked into. So my family are not from round here. They did come down to visit, and that is exactly what we did.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, any more money to be spent in the borough, it's so it'd be a welcome thing, you know, so I hope we do get it. I'd just like to issue a word of warning, really, is I've heard tonight about consultations taking place in the town centres and getting everybody back into the town centres. It was only yesterday from this borough council I had a text warning us that if you live in Abbey or in Wenbrook, then to get tests. We have got the Indian variant in this borough. So please don't spend all the money at once. We've not over this yet. We've not come through this pandemic, and we need to make sure that we've got some money when we do finally come through all of this horror that we're going through. So that's it, really. Just a word of caution is don't spend all the money at once. But I look forward to seeing you get 115,000 for this borough. Great stuff. Cheers.
No. Any officers? No. Any cabinet member? Councillor Evans.
Can I say thank you for putting some money my way towards my portfolio as the cabinet member responsible for refuse. I'm pleased to see that there's a commitment in here, and I hope that MHCLG approve our bid. I think one of the things that creates quite a bad image for our town centres, and also Borkington as well, when I walked around the other week, was some of our litter bins are rusty, some parts are missing, and that doesn't create a very good image for potential investors coming into the town. Obviously, I'm absolutely over the moon to see that there's some allocation in here to facilitate a trial of putting some of Bedworth Market back outside into All Saints Square. I suppose on behalf of the people of Bedworth, I want to say thank you, because hundreds of people have been requesting this now for decades, literally decades, and I'm really pleased to see that it's our first meeting and we're already getting a start with this. So thank you very much.
Councillor Gutteridge.
Thank you, Chair. Town Centre and Bolkington. Let's get some civic pride back in this borough. It's long overdue, and I fully welcome the market stalls going back into the centre of Bedworth. I'm that old, I can remember when they were there, and they were damn well used, and let's hope we can do it this time and they are well used. And I fully welcome this report with the bins as well, and I'm fully in favour of this report. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Golby.
Because I haven't got the paperwork. Just to clarify a few things for people that might read this and think, why have they chosen this? We were actually restricted in certain ways to what we could actually apply for. So whilst everything on here is stuff that we do want to do a lot more, and potentially that will be happening. It's just that we were restricted for what we could apply for this particular fund. So I just wanted to make that clear to people that might read this at home and just wonder, is that all we're doing? No, it's not all we're doing, but relating to this particular fund, that was what we were restricted to.
Any other member? No? Well, thank you everyone for your comments, and I hope that we do get this £115,000. I think it could make a significant difference to our commercial centres and also shoppers and visitors alike. Councillor Golby is absolutely correct that this is not everything we want to do. This is the tip of the iceberg, and yet again I come back to the point we are less than 3 weeks in control, and we are already delivering items which we wanted to put forward in opposition, which we put forward to the electorate at the election, and we have been working hard with officers. I think in fact some officers may be sick of the sight of us after the amount of meetings that we've had, but that is because we are determined to make a success of this, And to be fair to officers, I am sensing an attitude where they are grateful that we are giving direction, that we are working with them to achieve something for the residents, and that they are also hopeful that we can achieve good things for our borough. So I am absolutely delighted that we can do this, and our finance portfolio holder, Councillor Croft, it's his job to be tight with money, but I'm sure that we will try and work what money out of him we can do wherever possible to actually improve our town centres even further. And I believe there's a report coming later on that one as well. So, without any further ado, can we go to the vote? All those in favour of the recommendations? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. That then moves us on to agenda item number 14, which is the membership of the Transforming Bedworth and Transforming Nuneaton Cross-Party Working Group's membership. I am proposing the recommendations as printed that Craig Tracy MP be invited to sit on the Transforming Bedworth working group, and that Marcus Jones MP sits on the Transforming Nuneaton cross-party working group. It seems eminently sensible to me that those who have a high number of contacts in the circles that they walk and access to government ministers and inputs into government policy should be able to have an input into our town centres. After all, they are elected just as much as we are, and to keep them separate was short-sighted and, quite frankly, a political stunt from the previous controlling group. And in fact, it was so ridiculous that they would, after having the Transformation Board meetings, they would then have separate meetings with the MPs afterwards with the leader and officers when everything could have been done at once. And my experience on the Town Investment Board, where the MP is automatically on there for Nuneaton with Marcus, is that he is able to provide a conduit between the council, the board and all the other interested parties in our area and government, say what government will be looking for, go away and question ministers and departmental officials, and those are exactly the kind of people we need to have access to in the transformation agenda for both Nuneaton and Bedworth. They also have ideas, they have influence as well, which we should be trying to maximise absolutely, and that is why I am moving the recommendations tonight to fix something which should never have been broken in the first place. It was short-sighted, and we need to actually get everyone pulling together in the same direction. So if a Labour administration before could work with a Conservative county council, why couldn't they work with two Conservative MPs? It just beggars belief. So I move the recommendations as printed. Does that receive a seconder? Councillor Evans, thank you. Mrs Condacour?
A few comments, really. I don't think it's a correct title for the groups because they're not truly cross-party. Cross-party involves all parties that are involved in the council, and these don't. Also, you're saying that Craig Tracy and Marcus Jones are there as observers, but I don't think that's really the correct. You actually want them on the in the group. It's not. They're not just sitting there as observers, because you've actually said you're having dialogue with them and they're making suggestions. So I think the term observer is actually incorrect. It says in order to facilitate greater dialogue with government. Now, Councillor Evans works for the Parliament, so is that not a conflict of interests? I don't know whether he's on the working group, because I don't actually know what the membership is. So they're just a couple of points.
Firstly, Councillor Watkins is here as an observer officially, and yet I think it is fair to say I have included him at every step of the way that he has wanted to speak in this meeting, and I see no reason why that should be any different for the MPs. We're all here to work together in a collaborative manner to actually get our town centres regenerated, so I don't believe that is an accurate, pun intended, observation. And in relation to Councillor Evans, he doesn't actually work for the MPs concerned, and in any event I am sure that Councillor Evans is independent enough to make his own decisions and how he would intend to vote in any event. He works for, well, you don't, You just work for another MP. It's not Craig Tracy, is it?
Chair, if members of the public want to find standards authority, it's declared in my interest that I work for the House of Commons, but no, I do not work for an MP in this borough. I don't deem it to be a conflict of interest.
And finally, in relation to cross-party working, the answer is simple. It's down to the electorate, and the electorate has decided which parties they want to be in control and the main opposition party. If people want to have more influence, then the answer is quite simple. You get more councillors elected to this authority. And as far as I'm aware, there is only one Green member. He may sit as a group with two others, but he is elected as a single individual party member. So I believe the title is actually correct in that regard. Councillor Condacall, you wish to speak?
My wife was being disparaging. I think she was trying to say maybe the MP should be non-voting members, because effectively they take more part than just observing. So I think that's a better way of phrasing it, as that they're non-voting members of the working group. In terms of my non-involvement and the independents, the Greens took about 14.5% of the Nuneaton and Bedworth vote. Just in Nuneaton, it's about 18% of the vote at the election. So I do think it is unfortunate that we aren't even allowed to watch the meetings. I understand that through the democratic process as we have it, some politicians actually run councils, and some politicians are the largest opposition group. But I think to exclude the others from actually just even watching meetings is unfortunate and unhelpful, because I always do try to be a critical friend, and I know the sergeants who are the independent group also try to be critical friends and helpful rather than being a pain in the backside. So I do think we should at least be able to watch as non-voting, non-speaking, putting a silly hat on and standing in the corner type observers, but I do think it's actually not useful for us not to take part, because this should be a joint endeavour to regenerate our town, and it would be a great pity if I have to start putting freedom of information requests in for minutes and meetings. And we've made a really good start putting politics aside, and so I think not actually having Greens and Independents having an observational view of these working parties is unfortunate. And I know as his second at the County Council has always prided herself that absolutely any County Councillor can go to any meeting to observe, as long as they're obviously not interfering with the flow of the meeting. So I do ask that you do include the Green and Independent group as observers, obviously non-speaking, non-voting, that's fine, but it'd be good to see what's going on.
Or any points of clarification? Councillor Golby.
Observers is fine while you're in the room, but then there's misrepresentation and comments that we wouldn't be able to counteract when it's outside of the room. And I think it's right that the MPs are included because they are elected, and we don't run on proportional representation in this council, so unfortunately that is the way it works. So there is got to be a level of trust, and quite frankly I don't have that, and I'm happy with the arrangements as set forward in this document, and it shouldn't be changed.
Councillor Watkins, did you wish to come in?
I just wanted to say I knew I was here as an observer and I wasn't aware you was going to let me speak at all, so just thanks for letting me speak. Yeah, cheers.
Any officer? No? Any cabinet member? Councillor Golby.
Kind of reiterating some of the points that you made before, that it is completely ridiculous that this hasn't been done before, and it was based on a purely political decision by the previous leadership to directly exclude the MPs. It was a bad decision based on the exclusion of the MPs, also based on the fact that time and resources of officers in this building were actually having to be duplicated, and that again is a direct cost to people, residents of the borough, who I'm sure officers would rather spend their time doing something once rather than having to do something twice, because that doesn't make good time management for anybody. We should be looking to leverage the connections that our MPs have. That is why they are elected to Parliament, and not to do that, and to not only not to do that in a mistaken way, but to willfully not do that is very, very, very poor leadership and not good, again, for the residents of the borough. So we need to be able to leverage our connections that are in Westminster. and it will prove fruitful. I am absolutely sure of that. You know, it was said during the election that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and the previous leadership of this council was that weak link. And we can demonstrate that through decisions like this that were made on a purely political basis and not in any sort of policy or respect for the electorate. So I'm happy that we are reversing that now. And if we need to do that in future for any other things, I'm sure that we can look at that and reverse those political decisions that are not fruitful for residents as we go. I'm sure we're going to find more of them.
Unless any other member wishes to speak, I will move to the vote. So all those in favour of the recommendation, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. That moves us on to agenda item 15, which is recommendations from overview and scrutiny panels. I'm not aware of any which have come forward. Thank you. That moves us on to any other items, which in the opinion of the Chair should be considered urgent, and there is one which is about use of the additional restrictions grant. That is Councillor Croft. Thank you.
Pleased to present this report. In tandem with item 13, it can be considered the first steps, the small first steps of what you might call our economic action plan for the borough this year. I had thought we might have to get an extra cabinet to get this in, so I'd just like to thank Simone and the officers for getting it in so urgently. I was remiss in my remarks earlier not to pay tribute to the finance team, who are in the middle of a year end, who are short-staffed and have lots of politicians coming in wanting to change everything with a big agenda for change. So thank you, Simone. It's a short report, but I may speak for a while on it with your indulgence, Chair, because there are a few things I want to say. I'd like to talk to the background of the grants themselves, the financial situation with the grants as we found them, and then the recommendation in the report that I think Cabinet should adopt. So, as the report says, I assume everybody's read it, we've had an awful lot of support financially for business from the government. We don't always thank government enough for the support they give us. Additional restrictions grant has already come in with 3.7 million thereabouts of support, which is not earmarked. It's discretionary from us for business. So that is some fantastic support that we've had. But there has been some change in the guidance as to how we can use it. Previously, we were told that we had it until the end of March next year, but now the government has announced that they're going to top it up again to the tune of just over £700,000, but to access that third tranche of funding, we have to spend it all by the end of June. So that's broadly the background to the grants. In terms of the situation as we found it, and I will put it like this way. There's a lot less in this report than I expected to be bringing to Cabinet during May, because in our period of opposition in December and February, the Conservative Party proposed not just this scheme, which is before us tonight. The Conservative Party proposed a car parking scheme out of the additional restrictions grant. We proposed 3 hours for £1 and free in December and January of, it was the previous December and January, then we proposed it for the upcoming December and January. Now, when we took office, we discovered that, having been told under the previous administration that yes, ARG could be used for this funding, it cannot be used for it. That is because under the guidelines issued by the government for the additional restrictions grant, we cannot use it to finance ourselves, and obviously we would have a loss of income from the car parking. We would use it to offset that income, so we can't do that. Now, we proposed that scheme in December and February, and the previous Labour administration proposed a considerably weaker scheme, which is currently in operation until July, for market traders and car parking in March. We now know that the government clarified the guidance on this in December. That is when the guidance was published. So the upshot, Leader, is that the funding that we were assured was available by the previous administration, they didn't support it, but we were assured it was available, is not there. We have effectively been left a black hole in our finances for the policies that this borough needs to revive its economy and revive its town centres. Now, I'd like to assure the members of the public who may take an interest in these things that we will deliver on our manifesto commitment, and we will be announcing the next phase and the full phase of our economic action plan for this borough later on in the summer when we have worked out the financials. But it means that the financial room to manoeuvre is considerably less than we thought it was. So I would also like to point out that the Section 151 officer has assured me that she has had advice from the government that the scheme that is existing stands because it was already in place. So the existing car parking scheme that will expire in July will not immediately fall because we've become aware of the error in the guidance that we were left by the previous cabinet. So that's where we are. That's the black hole that we've inherited. And we will be bringing the manifesto commitment to car parking back at a later date. As for this scheme, Leader, it's a small part, but it's a very important part of reviving our town centres. We can start now with the market traders, because while we cannot give a rent break to market traders, what we can do is we can give a grant equivalent to rent to market traders, and it will net off. The officers have advised that we do that on a rolling basis, so it's easy to administer, and that fits with the need to stagger the grant spend with the next tranche. So if you look at point 4.3 in the report, it recommends that the offer be extended to July on a grant basis, and it gives options of 50% or 100%. I would support, and I would ask the Cabinet support, the 100% option, because, first of all, we promised it in the election, and we ought to keep our promises to the people. And secondly, because market traders have very thin margins, it's absolutely vital that we support them. They have had a lot, they weren't able to operate, some of them. They've had reduced footfall, and we know that we're going to have to diversify our town centre offer. Markets are going to have to be a key part of that. So this is something we can do now. Something we can do under the rules without making broader budget changes. We can do it through the Cabinet. That's why I've asked the officers to bring the report so quickly, and I would recommend that Cabinet proceed with the 100% reduction as laid out in 4.3 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
We'll second that as the portfolio holder for business and regeneration, which encompasses the town centres, and I'll speak on that later. Mrs. Condacor, did you wish to speak? I didn't know if you wish to speak now that you've heard the report, so I'm happy for you to come in if you wish. Okay, thank you. Non-Cabinet members, Councillor Condacor.
And the market is really important to me, and I've always supported it, so I'll massively support the move to 100% assistance for market traders. And I also think we need to look at new technology. So much has gone cashless now, and the market's still very much in the days of cash and things. And I think if there is some assistance we can do for swipe card type things for market traders, you know, if we can give them more technology, it may even be able to make them validate parking and things like that. I don't know if what's going on around the country, but it'd be really good to actually have a digital market, and also massively boost the amount of tweeting and social media we do for our markets, because we do a bit of tweeting saying, yeah, the market's open and yeah, whatever. But I do think if we're going to try and get more people in. And the final thing is we need to support people coming in on the buses. I know a vast amount of my residents have now had 2 vaccinations. I see people now at the bus stops again queuing at the first bus there. Bus passes are allowed. But I think some support for getting more people to use public transport into our towns would be great as well. I don't know how that fits in terms of what the government allows us to spend money on, but I say it would be good to try and get things alive again. And I know the good old days, Tesco's used to run a bus to Bedworth Tesco's. It used to sit driving around. And I don't know if we can actually just to draw up some trade with money, actually run a Wednesday buzz to the market, market day buzz or something, or just think outside the box. Just if there's money that needs to be spent, how can we get people who don't have a car but actually have money but they don't, just that's a positive thing, if you know what I mean. And almost the Tesco's buzz was great, 'cause it said Tesco's on the side. So if you had a buzz that said Nuneaton Market on the side, rather than £350 million for the NHS, it could say, come to Nuneaton Market.
Or any points of clarification? No? Councillor Watkins?
And thanks for what you just said, Councillor Croft. It wasn't the Cabinet that made the decision. We went on the advice that was gave by officers. It might have been the Cabinet that made the decision, but it was the officers' advice at the time. The main problem has been that there's been so many funding bids going on, so many different guidelines, and things changing all the time, which is now something that you will find out. Things change all the time from government, and that's the way it is. I'm not blaming the officers. That might have been the advice they had at the time, which is what they gave to Cabinet. It's like I don't personally write bids out, but on social media get accused of writing bids out personally. It's not what councillors do. We go off advice, and it's the officers that write the bids, not councillors. So I'm just pointing out the fact that we went on the advice of officers at the time. The advice might have changed. I don't know. I don't know the facts like you do. That's all I needed to say. Thank you, Chair.
Points of clarification? Councillor Golby?
The current parking that still stands is a weaker version, as has been said, is a weaker version of what we proposed in our budgetary proposals and also the proposals we made before Christmas. And had the last Labour administration voted in the 3 hours for £1, that would have still stood too, and our residents would be benefiting from it today. So the only reason we can't implement it is because it was voted down by the last Labour administration.
With Councillor Croft?
Councillor Watkins, that in the British system of politics, advisers advise and ministers decide, and it is the political element that always bears the responsibility.
Any officer wish to come in? No. Any Cabinet member? Well, I'll wrap this one up then. I fully support this recommendation, and Councillor Croft is absolutely right. This is just phase one of the economic recovery plan which we are putting forward. There is much that we would like to do, a lot still left to do, but this is the first phase in actually delivering for the businesses and town centres that we have, because it will also benefit businesses, because we have a whole economic ecosystem in the town centre as well. This is specifically about market traders. Businesses also benefit from having people come into the market and supporting market traders, because they will go backwards and forwards. And Councillor Croft is absolutely right. Whilst that may or may not have been officer advice, if there is the political will and it is legal and it is financially viable, then there is no reason why it cannot be done. And that is exactly what we have shown here in this report, that we have the political will and determination to push forward to make improvements and support our town centres through this very difficult time. And indeed, one of the first things I did after the election was go and visit market traders. And the atmosphere from the market traders in both Nuneaton and Bedworth has been phenomenal about how much they want us to get on with the job and make these improvements, and that is exactly what we are doing. And we will do more in time. We have to be mindful of the council finances, and I can assure residents that Councillor Croft and myself and other members of the Cabinet, together with officers, are working tirelessly to find the money to deliver a car parking charge. I think that too often this council under the previous administration has forgotten that the market traders and the markets and the businesses in the good times have supported this council and this borough through thick and thin, and now they are the ones who need our help and support, it is only right that we back them to the hilt as far as we can with the impacts of COVID. And doing what the previous administration did has denied us an opportunity to actually provide that support for the rest of this financial year. Businesses, and the market traders in particular, need certainty and be able to plan, because for the past 15-16 months that is exactly what they haven't been able to do because of the COVID crisis. They didn't know whether they'd be able to open, they didn't know whether they would have shoppers coming in and out of the town centres, and what the infection rates would be, and whether we're in lockdown, quite rightly because it was an emerging pandemic. But that had a severe impact on their ability to trade, and we should be extremely mindful of that as councillors and as a council that wishes to support and be united to achieve. We didn't do that under the previous administration, and that is why I am proud that tonight, along with all the other agenda items we have brought forward, we have set out as we mean to go on, which is supporting our businesses, our borough, our traders and our residents to do just that, and we will give as much support as we can moving forward. So I hope that we'll be able to spend all of the 250 grand approximately that we have left, so that we can qualify for the between £700,000 and £800,000 top up from central government. Because if we don't spend that 250k, then we will not qualify. It is as simple as that, and we will have lost out on a significant amount of money to be able to turn things around and help our businesses, and that would be a crying shame for our businesses who have depended upon us for so long during this pandemic. And we will continue to do that. And if there are any other viable schemes that come forward, we have been trying to consider any and all options for getting that £250,000 out of the door and into the pockets of traders and businesses and into the economy of our town centres. And we will continue to do so. So I have no doubt that Councillor Croft will look on any item that is viable. And if it is viable and we can do it, then we will be more than happy to bring forward a paper and pass it through Cabinet or Council. And we have the will here to actually move forward, which it is a shame that the previous administration didn't under the previous leadership. So having said all that, we have a plan which will take us through to July so that we can get some more work done on the finances. I shall bring it round to a vote. Can I have a show of hands from all those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. I just want to finish by saying thank you to all those who have attended, and to councillors who are not on the Cabinet. I hope I have demonstrated that I do hope to try and be more open and inclusive in Cabinet meetings, and so long as we don't deteriorate into long verbiage speeches, then I'm more than happy to listen to any points which come forward. And so long as the rules of debate are followed, then I will enable that to continue. So Councillor Watkins, you're more than welcome to come to every Cabinet meeting and speak, and that goes for Councillor Condacourt and any of the other members on the opposition, or indeed from our own benches. So, having said that, thank you very much for your attendance. I declare tonight's meeting closed, and safe trip home. Thank you, everyone.